Hi, this is Dave with Recording Guru, and today I'm going to be showing you how to quantize multitrack drums. And I'm going to be showing you how to do that using elastic audio. And so the first steps that you're going to want to take in approaching this is you want to first make sure that you have grouped your drum tracks together. So I am going to select all my drum tracks, go down to groups, and say New Group. And then I'm going to name this drums, hit OK. So now you can see it's grouped together. So any edits I do will keep the phase relationships together between the tracks. The next step I recommend is to make sure that all your edits are good. And then once you're happy with your edits, to consolidate them all together so that all of the audio clips on all the individual tracks are exactly the same length. And that's just going to make your editing in Elastic Audio a lot easier and also continue to help maintain that phase relationship, which is really important. So to do that, go up to Edit, and then you say Consolidate Clip. And you can see now they're all the same length. The next step is to go to Elastic Audio. And you just do that by clicking this area and choose Rhythmic for drums. And you'll see the tracks turn gray for a short period of time. And that's just Pro Tools analyzing the individual drum hits so that when we go to quantize, it will know what bits of the audio are the hits so that it knows how to quantize the audio. So when you do this, you'll notice it will make available an analysis mode and a warp mode. The analysis mode is where Pro Tools has tried to identify the individual notes or the individual hits. And this can be edited, but you're going to be spending most of your time with warp markers, moving these around to tighten up the drums. Now, when it comes to quantizing, we're just going to use the quantize process. And so I'm going to go to Event Operations, Quantize. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but it is important to determine what Quantize grid you want to use and whether your groove swings or not. And in this case, let me play the drums so you can hear how they are slightly not in time with the metronome. And I can show you how this setting is going to be helpful for quantizing these drums. So let me hit play. So they're not terrible, but you can see there's definitely moments like here. You can see this is the downbeat, and you can see the kick drums playing a little bit early. And back here on the snare drum, it's a little bit late, and so forth. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is just show you how to quantize the drums ultra tight, but you definitely have the option to choose what percentage you want to tighten the drums by. And of course, that's nice in maintaining some of the natural feel of the drums. So the options I think are really important to get right in the Quantize menu is, first of all, the Quantize Groove. And if we were to count along with this groove, you can hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a. You can hear how there are notes that are played in that 16th note grid and feel. And something that can help you determine that too is by changing the grid value and seeing what tends to line up closest to the notes that you have here. And you can see how 16th, almost every note is accounted for with the grid subdivisions. And so in any case, we are going to use that 16th note, and like I said, I'm just going to do 100%, which if you don't check strength, then that is just assume that you want 100% quantize. So I'll hit apply, and you can see all these warp markers have now been created, and the notes have moved. So I'm going to undo again so you can see before and after. So you can see how this note that was a little bit late is now more in time. So let's listen to this back and hear how that sounds and see how close we got. Okay, overall, it sounds pretty close and good for what we need. Now, of course, how well this quantize happens also depends on how good the performance previously was. So if the performance wasn't ultra or wasn't very tight, then you're going to need to do a little bit more work at this point. But you'll notice that with these warp markers, if you are with the Smart tool, you can hover over these and click and move these notes around. Now that is going to follow whatever setting you're in. So if you're in grid settings, you'll notice it is going to snap to the grid, whatever your grid setting is. And if you're in slip mode, then you'll be able to move the notes freely. You can erase any of these warp markers by double-clicking on them, and that'll return them back to an unquantized state. There were a couple moments that didn't sound good with the crash cymbals that you may have noticed towards the end, where it was trying to quantize the way the crash cymbal hit. So there's an example right there. You can hear how the crash cymbal kind of sounds choppy. So you can always highlight by clicking and dragging across the top part of one of the audio clips and then hitting delete. And let's listen to that again. Yeah, much better. Again, before and after, much smoother. And there were a few places where cymbals did that, and that's kind of a common problem that you do want to fix when using elastic audio. So like this last note, that's not right, so I just fixed it there by double-clicking as well to delete, and here's another one like that. So just highlighting and hitting delete. Now, if the notes were played closer to another place in a grid, you might have some moments where, let's say, if the drummer was dragging and you quantized, it could end up sounding like this. So you could hear how that got off. And so if you have moments where the quantize isn't quite right, you can highlight, hit delete, and then often moving a few of the notes closer to where they should be. So again, to add these markers, I'm just clicking where there would be analysis markers. If I go back to analysis, you can see how those show up also on the warp grid. And I can just click and move them to where I want them to be and tighten up the drums any way that I'd like. So, and you can also highlight again and use quantize again in sections as well to speed up that process. All right, so that should do it for you. One other thing actually that I wanted to show you. If I wanted to reset and remove elastic audio, you can highlight the clips and hit delete, and now the drums are back to where they were. Okay, so you can hear how that's no longer quantized. Sometimes you may choose to just fix certain moments of the timing of the drums. And in the case like that, you can see that using elastic audio, you can still click and move notes around. But in this case, you do want to make sure that you create multiple warp markers when you do your edits. Because if you don't, then you'll see moving one note will affect many notes behind it. So often if I'm going to work this direction, what I like to do is add a warp marker at the beginning of where I'm working and add a warp marker at the end. And then as I'm moving along, if I need to move, like let's say if I wanted to move this kick drum right here, I would create or add a warp marker before and after so that as I move this note, the material before and after that moment doesn't get moved. So I hope you find that helpful. Leave a comment if you have any other questions, and I'd love to get back to you to try to answer any questions that you guys may have. Take care.